What's happening, Internet fam? So I'm doing another political video in the dark tonight, and this time I wanted to talk about the government's shutdown. For those of you who don't know, I'm a pretty intense libertarian. I was a big fan of Ron Paul in 2012, and ever since then I've been pretty jaded about the state of the American Union, the state of our government, the state of the way corporations seem to run everything. Certainly at the federal government level in Washington, it seems like corporations pretty much run everything. So that's my view. I'm happy to hear evidence that doesn't support that view, and I would love to change my mind, but at this point in time, at this moment, it seems like that is definitely the case. I mean, corporations pretty much own all of Congress, all of Senate, and the executive branch, the legislative branch, and also the judicial branch. I mean, half of the Supreme Court justices are former Monsanto lawyers, so at this point I have very, very little faith in our government and the corporations that run it. And, you know, the government shutdown, it's so interesting to me because so many people were so upset. Oh, these government employees aren't getting paid. It's like, okay, so a few unconstitutional TSA employees aren't going to get paid. Let's think about that for a minute, right? It's funny because I was at the airport flying from San Diego to Honolulu, and the TSA guy, I opted to not go through the backscatter x-ray machine because, you know, there are some very real health risks associated with that technology. And the TSA guy who had to pat me down because I wouldn't go through the machine, it's funny, he's like, okay, so I'm gonna just, you know, lightly touch your genitalia with the back of my hand, and I can't remember what else he said. And the whole experience was, I mean, it's hilarious. You know, you're standing in public with, like, you know, 300 or 400 people there, and this guy's gonna feel you up and make sure you don't have anything that you're gonna bring on the plane. So, I mean, it's just, you know, it's totally ridiculous. And then, like, so I'm laughing about it because, I mean, it's funny, you know, it's a funny scenario, a funny situation. And he goes, well, you know, I don't enjoy it. I'm getting paid to do this. And then he stops for a second because of the government shutdown, and he goes, actually, I'm not getting paid to do this. So here I am, you know, the day before my 41st birthday. Is that right? What year is this? Yeah, 42nd birthday. Yeah, it was 42nd birthday. The day before my 42nd birthday, in the airport, being felt down by this guy in his 20s, who technically was not getting paid to do so. So that's my little funny story about the government shutdown, my personal anecdote. But, you know, obviously, in my opinion, I would love to see everything regarding the federal government shut down, all of it. Just, I mean, everything's unconstitutional. The NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the IRS, the Fed, the FDA, the FCC, all of these, the CDC, the AM, I mean, all of these unconstitutional federal bureaucrat agencies always vote in favor of whatever is going to make the corporations more money. They rarely vote in what's going to do, what's going to benefit American people, what's going to benefit American families, what's going to benefit small family-owned businesses. They almost never vote in favor of that. And that's true even at the, you know, in the judicial branch now. You know, the Supreme Court has ruled in favor of corporations almost every time. I mean, look at Citizens United, right? Corporations can now be treated as people legally. I mean, our society has gone off the rails. This is nuts, right? This is obviously nuts, right? I mean, am I nuts for pointing it out? Am I nuts for pointing out that, like, all of this completely unconstitutional nightmare government overreach shouldn't exist at all? And so for me, when I hear about the government shutdown, I'm just like, yes, finally, you know, and I really hoped that the government shutdown would go longer. I really hoped that all these people with these, you know, garbage government jobs who I look basically as welfare queens. In my opinion, if you're working for the government, you know, 90% of the government jobs out there, you are a welfare queen on, public assistance, basically. That's the way I look at government jobs. And that includes the military. I feel like military is definitely government assistance where they're just, they couldn't get a real job. So here they are, dodging bullets in Kevlar vests, working for Halliburton. I just, I really wish that we could, as a nation, decide to stop funding the federal government. Just stop. If everybody just stopped paying taxes, just straight up said, listen, we're not going to pay for this anymore. Maybe we'd stop using robots to launch $50,000 missiles to strike children in tents in the third world. Maybe we'd stop, propping up these giant biopharmaceutical companies that have been poisoning us and out and out perpetrating a genocide on the American populace for years now. I mean, some of the adjuvants that they're putting in vaccines are super toxic. I mean, these vaccines have aluminum, fluoride, mercury. They still have mercury, even though we know how toxic mercury is to people. The flu shot still has mercury in it, and they're still giving the flu shot, encouraging pregnant mothers to get the flu shot, which the evidence is that's one of the worst possible things you could do to your fetus if you're a pregnant mother, is go get the flu shot. It's just straight up brain damage straight to the fetus. It's just awful. Among other things, there's so many things. They've determined now that there's viruses in these vaccines that can cause sterility in females. Look up the situation with the HPV vaccine and what's gone on with a lot of young women in Australia, where somehow that came to light more than it did here in this country. Probably because here in the U.S., the corporations have such absolute control over the media and over our government that you're just not going to hear most of this stuff here in the U.S. And that's also true in Australia, but apparently in this one specific instance, it was slightly less true. So, I just wish we could get rid of, 99.9% of the federal government and all of its programs, all of its unconstitutional programs, including the military, including, everything that people go, well, we need this, we need that. It's like, no, we don't. We really don't. If we had a real Second Amendment without any kind of infringement on our right to own and bear arms, which it's right there in the Bill of Rights. I don't know why people are so confused about it, whether they're talking about bump stocks or assault rifles or, any of these weapons. I mean, clearly limiting any of that is an infringement on your right to bear arms, clearly. And the language is shall not be infringed. I mean, this is just basic English. So, if American families were able to arm themselves with these kind of weapons, we wouldn't need a military. Who's going to invade a country where every family has an M16? You know what I mean? It's just that would be so much better of a form of defense than the B-2 bombers and the drones that we're overwhelmingly using to murder poor people in the third world that have nothing to do with the U.S. It's not even our interest in most of these cases to murder the children. We're doing it for Israel. We're doing it for Saudi Arabia. We're doing it for, our allies that are, also funding terrorists that are directly assaulting American troops in many cases. It's, I just wish we could really shut down the federal government, like for reals, like not just like this little temporary half shutdown, like a full shutdown, like really shut it down. But, I'm not optimistic about it at this point. Most people just think that me even talking like this makes me a radical, even though I'm just, suggesting a return to the Constitution, but I guess that makes me a radical, right? Because I believe in, due process and the rule of law and habeas corpus, so, clearly I'm a radical, but, continuing to build robots to murder children in the third world, that's just normal. That's just par for the course. That's the expected thing that we should expect from our government, from our elected officials, and and from the corporations who own all of them. It's just, I don't know. I think my point of view is completely common sense and rational, and yet everybody else thinks, oh, that's just crazy. You want to stop paying taxes and stop murdering children in the third world. you're a crazy person. It's like, you know, and it's like anything else, you know. I think that it's only crazy in the context of you're not the one pulling the trigger, you know. The guys who are running those drone strikes in Pakistan and Afghanistan and Iraq and all over the world, really, they have PTSD. They are struggling to deal with the reality that they are in. And if it was the rest of the American taxpayers pulling those triggers, I doubt very much that the drone strike program would continue. I seriously doubt it. But, you know, I don't know. Whatever. If I'm the only one out here saying that murdering children in tents with $50,000 missiles fired by robots is wrong, then I will be happy to be all by myself saying so. All right, Internet Pam, have a great night. And let's shut the government down for real, right?